you can see my screen properly? Okay. So hi, this is Prashant Nair. I'm more into this big data Hadoop development, into big data architecture. I myself am a data scientist, and today's session is more of a demo session on big data, on Hadoop development, and basically I'll be telling you what are the prerequisites that is required for learning Hadoop. So a very general question that I generally ask everyone, what exactly is the word big data? Because Hadoop is something that is meant to handle something called as big data. So before I put forward my viewpoints, I just want to know what is your view on big data. So a very general question to everyone. So what is big data as per your viewpoint? You can just respond to me via the chat box. So just want a couple of points from your end before I continue. Okay, any attempts? Okay, fine. Okay, for me it's millions of raw data. Millions of raw data. Are you referring to the size of the data itself? Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, so now I will do one small demo in front of you, okay, directly. I have a file, okay, I have a small file. The size of this file is 507 MB. Okay, this is the general size of my file. And before I say anything further, see my system configuration. I am having a Core i7 processor. That's actually two processors in my laptop with 32 gigs of RAM. Okay, so this is my configuration. So now let me know, is this data a big data for you? Is this data, the one which I'm showing you, a big data? Yes or no? Based on your understanding, based on what you feel, just let me know. Is this 507 MB file a big data? It's a normal text file actually. Okay, fine. Okay, so not actually, but still you can use it in Hadoop. Okay, fine. So see, now I'm going to show you something. I'll just double click on this file. Okay, so what will happen is Notepad will try to open this file. He will try, and finally he will say a last moment stuff stating that not responding. The software is getting crashed while he tried to load the data. And even one more small observation which you can do here is, see here, this is the general Notepad instance which is responsible to open the file. As you can see here, the RAM consumed by Notepad is 1 GB. 1 GB of RAM is consumed by the specific software to open the file, which is of size 500 MB. So what observation do we find here? What do we understand from this small demo? When I say big data is all, first of all, it's just a term. Okay, it's not a technology, it's not a technique. Big data is all about the ability of the software to handle the data. So in general, most of the people have their own definitions, like IBM has their definition, Cloudera has their definition, MapReduce has their definition. But in general, whenever we discuss about big data is just, it's about the ability of the software to handle the data. When I say handle, I will say handle refers to loading and transformation. Loading and transformation. So this is what big data is all about. Big data is all about the ability of the software to handle the data. For example, I will say when this notepad, okay, this notepad, just now I've shown you one demo, we tried to open a file which is a normal text file, that is 2012-01hourly.txt. That was the name of the file, which was of size 507 MB. Okay, when I tried to open this with notepad, this application got crashed. The application got crashed. So one observation what I understand from here is for notepad, the data is a big data. For notepad, the data is a big data. But if I try to open the same file, suppose if I try to open the same file using WordPad, see what happens. Now I'm trying to open the same file using WordPad. So you can see not responding here, you can see 1% var here, but within some seconds you will find that the WordPad have successfully opened this file. Technically, the Word file have loaded this file in the RAM successfully. So by seeing this, you can take one thing into consideration, that for WordPad, this file is not a big data. Okay, so the thing is, when we say big data, remember, to be short and sweet, it's only about the ability of the software to handle the data. Okay, it's not about, actually it's not about the size of the data or something. Okay, even a small size data can act as a big data. Okay, you know, most of my clients, whenever they come in front, whenever they have a meeting with me regarding processing a data, a very general question which I ask to them is, which existing technology do you use to handle the data? For example, if a client comes in front of me and says that I have a big data which I need to process, can I use Hadoop? If I get such kind of questions, my general answer to them is, which existing technology or application is used by the organization to handle data? So, you know, generally I get answers like, okay, some people say I use Oracle, okay, Oracle SQL. Some say I use Teradata. Some say I use SQL Server. Some say I use MySQL. Okay, so I mean, there are many applications that they use basically to handle their large data. So the problem is, now see, let's take an example of Oracle. Oracle SQL. I'll say Oracle Enterprise Tool. Okay. So the problem with Oracle is, the single instance server of Oracle can maximum handle up to 12 terabytes of data. And in today's world, this data is growing like anything. You know, through social media or through, you know, like website signups. There are various methods through which we are getting tons and tons of data every day. And in today's world, data is king. So we need data so that we can understand our customer. The more data we have, the more accuracy will be our results. For example, if suppose, let me just give you a small example. If suppose I have your internet logs with me, okay, suppose if you're using a broadband, okay, if I subscribe to that broadband and if I tell the broadband company to share your, you know, browsing logs. So by seeing your browsing logs, the more logs I get, the more easy it will be for me to understand you. For example, if I see that past 3 to 4 days, you are searching for a Samsung mobile. So from that, log, I can come to a conclusion that yes, you are a potential customer for Samsung. Therefore, the moment you start internet, let me show you some pop-ups related to Samsung. So this is what actually we are doing these days. We are doing something called as analytics on the data. When I say analytics, it's all about understanding the value of your data. So whatever data, whatever garbage data you get, the role of a business analyst is to get value of that data. But the problem is the size of the data is heavy. You know, it's not that the size of the data is within the limit of 12 terabytes. Forget it. In today's even smaller projects also, the minimum size which I have handled in my organization is up to 180 terabytes in my smallest project. So you can very well understand how much trillions of data we handle per day. And major thing is, when I say handling, we cannot wait for several days or several months to get the data processed. We need the result at least by end of the day. This is what we say. If I start processing at morning, I should get the result by evening, so that the very next day I can get some offers for my customers. It's a very general thing. So this is where the problem of big data started, because people started realizing that the data is scaling, the data is increasing day by day. Since the data is increasing day by day, they need a mechanism, they need a kind of software through which they can handle the data. When I say handle refers to the loading and transformation of the data. And this was well achieved using a framework called as Hadoop. So one of the very short and cute reason why Hadoop, the reason is Hadoop says I can handle n number of data with respect to the resources provided. Or I can say irrespective of the resources provided. So see, as an example, let me tell you, just now you all witnessed that my laptop is having 32 gigs of RAM and like 2 processors. Each processor is Core i7. So in that case, if I give this hardware configuration to Hadoop, Hadoop can be super fast. Hadoop can handle up to any limits. See, in our case, I had a file which was of size 507 MB. Even though I had a good hardware configuration, yet Notepad failed to process that data. However, Hadoop says that if hardware is good, I can process. It's not about the size, it's not about the speed, it's not about the type of the data. Hadoop says that I can handle any kind of data if the hardware supports me. It's not about the software, it's about the hardware when it comes to handling the data. So this is where Hadoop became more famous. Okay, so let me show you what was the previous scenario and what is today's scenario when we talk about Hadoop. Just for your understanding, as you can see in this diagram, the diagram which you can see in your screen, the yellow part is something which was the existing architecture. If we want to process any data and if we want any results, what we basically do? We will have humongous amount of data. This data is given to one ETL tool, any ETL tool, any database or whatever. The ETL tool is responsible to perform the transformation and loading process. Once the data is organized in nature, we give the data to a OLAP tool. OLAP is analytical processing tool. Okay, it can be even RDBMS. This entire thing can be done by a single RDBMS tool. It's not necessary that there are 2 tools that is required. Okay, so once the data is given to the RDBMS will perform his computation on the data depending upon the logic, and the results will be given to your reporting tool. And reporting tool's responsibility is to show the result graphically, either in the form of graph or whatever method you choose, you prefer to, or maybe submitting the results in the dashboard. So if you understand this approach, in this approach, the major problem, this approach is the existing approach, but the major problem with this approach is to apply this approach, your data must be a structured data. So see, when we talk about data, data are of basically three types: structured data, semi-structured data, and unstructured data. Structured data means the data which is organized physically, organized in such a way that the standards are applied and the standards are understood by the software. For example, SQL. If your data is organized through SQL standards, I will say it's a structured data. Any data which is stored in rows and columns. So the problem is you can only process a structured data in this current architecture. You cannot process a semi-structured or unstructured. Semi-structured, just a basic example, XML files. Unstructured, a basic example, the normal log files, text files. Second problem is hardware capacity problem. Irrespective of the hardware what you provide, still there's a situation where the software gets failed or corrupted. Like Notepad, how Notepad got failed. In similar way, even Oracle gets failed, even MySQL gets failed. Third problem, and the very big problem for any organization, and it's a nightmare for any project manager, is the software license cost. If your project budget is less, and if your software licensing costing is more, how will you achieve the milestone of the project? So every project managers need a cheaper but effective solution for the specific project. So software licensing cost is one of the issue. Last thing, not scalable. So see here, if you have an existing software and if the software requires more hardware, in that case, the scalability of the hardware is something which is very much restricted in nature. It's not mandatory that including multiple hardwares will solve your issue. This may not be same every time. And lastly, it requires huge time for processing huge volume of data. So as and when the data size increases, the processing time will also increase. So what people are doing in today's world, in today's projects, basically, people are more focused on the usage of Hadoop. And the role of Hadoop is to perform the transformation of the data such that your analytics tool, here the second box is the analytics tool, your analytics tool will be comfortable enough to handle the data. Now mind it, your analytics tool can also be an ETL tool. It's not necessary that it should be a different kind of tool. However, here there's an extra layer, that is a Hadoop layer. The Hadoop layer takes the accountability of working on your big data. See, when big data comes into picture, this architecture fails. But when big data comes into this picture, this architecture will never fail. Conditions, you must provide sufficient hardware. That's the only condition. So, this layer is been introduced to beat the problem of big data. Okay, so this architecture actually beats the big data problem. Once the big data problem is solved, then you will use some analytical tools to get some value out of it, and the value is then given to your reporting tool. So the benefit of using this green column is, the first benefit is it's scalable. When I say scalable, you can increase the amount of hardware, you can decrease the amount of hardware, Hadoop can adjust accordingly. It's very less expensive because Hadoop says that I can actually use any kind of hardware. Even if you introduce a P4 system, you can use that. However, in our real production, we use high-end servers. That's a different point. Lastly, high throughput. The throughput is high. Execution time is lesser, and the desired outcome will be faster. So this is the current architecture that we follow generally. Okay. So when I talk about Hadoop, remember Hadoop is a Java-based framework. Okay. Hadoop is used for distributed processing of big data. So whichever data you term it as big data, Hadoop is the one who will help you to crack that big data. Any organization who is using their existing tool, if that existing tool gets failed to handle the data, then Hadoop can be a solution for such an issue. So Hadoop is used for processing the big data. Hadoop has its own dedicated storage. Okay, so that storage is termed as HDFS, that is Hadoop Distributed File System. First thing first, Hadoop purely follows distributed computing standards. However, it's not necessary that the person who is using Hadoop should know distributed computing. So without having a good knowledge on distributed computing, still you can implement a distributed cluster for yourself through Hadoop. So we just have understood what is big data. We understood what's the role of Hadoop in big data and what is the need of Hadoop by showing you the architecture. So before I continue, before I say anything further, I just want to know if you have any questions regarding till now whatever we have discussed. Any questions regarding the architecture or any questions regarding the big data? Feel free to ask any questions. Okay. So how many of you are actually working on big data? Those who are attending these sessions, how many of you are actually working on big data? I mean, after understanding the big data from here, can you tell me, is anybody working on big data? In your existing organizations? Okay, I got one response. Okay, so what is the data size which you are actually working on? Okay, so you are getting incremental data of 2 gigs almost every day, right? It's an incremental data. Okay, got it. So that's really good. So are you using Hadoop or some other tool? Hadoop, great, fine. So the prerequisites to learn Hadoop. First and foremost thing, if you want to learn Hadoop, it is expected that you must know at least core Java. Now especially, see here in this course we are discussing more of Hadoop development, okay? But still, even though this is a Hadoop development course, initially we will be covering some basic administration. Since we will be covering some basic administration means you should be comfortable to set up a cluster, you should be comfortable to understand and do some basic troubleshooting in your cluster. You know, in today's world, even a developer must know these things. Then only he can be called as a full-fledged Hadoop developer. So the first criteria is you must know core Java. And when I say core Java, just the basics of Java, and you should be comfortable with util package. And you should be comfortable enough to create logics. Okay, you should be very comfortable for creating logics. Secondly, you should have a basic understanding of Linux. Okay, so basic understanding is required. Okay, just a normal Linux commands. And then, last but not the least, for practicing, you will require at least 4 gigs of RAM system. Okay, so if you want to practice Hadoop, then it is recommended that you must have at least 4 gigs of RAM system with you, so that it will be easy for you to perform the practicals, whatever has been done in the class. So in our class, actually, we'll be starting with Hadoop. So when I say Hadoop, we'll be doing installation and configuration of Hadoop, where actually I'll be covering 3 modes of installation, that is standalone mode, pseudo distributed mode. Pseudo distributed is something which is preferred by developers because developers needed a pseudo distributed setup to test their applications, what they create in Java or whatever. So lastly, we go for fully distributed mode. So I'll be teaching all these things from the scratch, and I'll be using Ubuntu operating system for that. So once the installation and configuration of Hadoop is done, the next step we'll be learning some basic administrations. Okay, basic administration for Hadoop. We'll be understanding something called HDFS architecture. Okay, we'll be understanding about how Hadoop provides reliability, how Hadoop provides scalability. All these things you'll be learning. After that, you'll be learning about MapReduce architecture. Once you complete the MapReduce architecture, we will directly dive into the development, where I'll be showing how to implement a MR program using Java, where you will be learning multiple concepts like combiner, partitioner, distributed cache. Also, I'll be showing one detailed domain project on using MapReduce using Java. Okay. Afterwards, I'll be covering Hadoop ecosystems. So under Hadoop ecosystems, I'll be covering Pig, Hive, HBase, Scoop, Flume, Zookeeper. So I'll be covering all these things right from the scratch. And lastly, I'll be giving you a brief intro on Cloudera OS, because Cloudera is something that is more famous in the market, so I prefer to give more practicals on Cloudera also. And lastly, I'll be giving you a real-time data acquisition project, where actually I will be showing how to perform real-time data acquisition from Twitter, how to get real-time Twitter streams using various Hadoop ecosystem components, and how to process the Twitter data. This is what we will do as a final project, just to understand what, just to apply all the skills whatever you have learned in the class. So this is what something you will be learning in your entire course. So if you have any questions regarding this, please let me know. So you can just refer the TOC offered by Tiny Planet. So if you have, you can just refer the TOC. So based on the TOC, you can understand what are the things you are going to learn. And my way of teaching is, whatever I basically teach, I document everything in the notepad, and for diagrammatic representations I use the Excel sheets like how I've shown you. And most of the training will be like 80% practicals. So I offer maximum practicals. So for practicals, what I'll be doing is I'll be demonstrating everything in the screen in front of you, and all the steps, whatever I do, I'll be documenting that in the notepad, so that at the end of every lecture, I will be sharing the notepads to my customers, so that it will be easy for them to follow the notepads for the practicals, to implement the practicals in your systems. Okay, so any questions, any concerns, please let me know. I'm available via chat box right now. If you want to ask anything, please ask. These sessions will be online sessions, like the same session which you are attending right now. It will be a LVC, okay, live virtual class. This actually, this information you can get from the admin of our Tiny Planet. You can just confirm from the team. So they will be giving you details on when the sessions are going on. Is it a weekday or weekend batch or whatever? You can just confirm from them. They will give you more information on that. So Rushabh, Shipali, any queries, any concerns? Please let me know. If you have any questions, suppose if you're working on Hadoop or suppose if you're working on the big data problem, if you have any concerns, please let me know.
Hi Prashant, this is Shipali.
Hi Shipali, tell me.
Prashant, actually I'm from Oracle PL/SQL background. I'm interested in updating my skill set. So in prerequisites you mentioned that core Java is important. I don't have any basic knowledge on core Java. So how do you like me to start? Where?
Okay, so what about your SQL background?
Yeah, I have sound background of PL/SQL.
Great. So see, for your initial start, you can survive yourself using Hive, because Hive is moreover like a SQL-like commands. Okay, so if you want to process a data using Hadoop, that too without using core Java, then for you there's an option of Hive. Apart from that, I will be teaching Pig from the scratch. So you know, for the initial start, you can survive yourself using Pig and Hive. However, for the long run, it is expected that you should also start learning core Java if your intention is to become a Hadoop developer. But suppose if your intention is to become an analyst or like a data analyst or business analyst kind of role, in that case you can survive using Pig and Hive also, considering that you will be learning some analytic tools like R or SAS.
Sorry, I don't have any understanding knowledge of what is this Pig, Hive, HBase, and Flume.
So that's what you will be learning in this course actually, about Pig Hive. So see, just for an example, Hive is something that is similar to SQL. If I want to process a table, okay, if I want to process a data, if I want to do some filtering operation, we use a where clause in SQL. Similarly, in Hive also we use the same way, where clause.
Sorry, Prashant, my question is like different. Okay, when you say this Pig, Hive, or HBase, so is that something like commands you use to get the data from, means what it is? It is just architecture.
It's a development environment. It's a general development environment.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So what would be the duration of the class?
Yeah, the duration is 32 hours. Okay, it's a 32-hour session.
Okay.
Okay, and which actually 30 hours will be the instructional period and 2 hours will be dedicated for projects.
Got it. Okay.
And you will be working on 2 domains. One is retail domain project and one is social media. So these are the 2 things that I'll be touching up in my class.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. So any more concerns, please let me know.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much for attending this demo. I hope this demo was informative enough. Thank you very much. Have a great day.